The energy on set was incredible. I didn't actually work with any stuntmen on the set.
We would love to. We just need the leads. So anybody out there, if you've got any leads for us, you can email us, you can call us.
On the morning of March 12, 2025, news outlets across the country lit up with the same unbelievable headline. Mike Wolfe, the longtime face of the hit reality show Heritage Seekers, had been handed a life sentence after a massive investigation that sounded more like a story from a mystery novel than real life. To millions of viewers, Mark had always been the cheerful explorer of forgotten barns and dusty attics, a man who traveled the country searching for pieces of the past. But a long investigation revealed a different side of him, one connected to hidden artifact routes stretching across borders and collectors willing to pay incredible amounts for rare items that never made it onto television. The chain of events began on June 17, 2023, when police in Bloomington, Indiana responded to a call from a neighbor about a strange smell coming from the home of historian Harold Clemens. Inside, they found the elderly professor lying still with an old silver pocket watch in his hand. The engraving on the watch didn't match anything he should have owned. A week later, a museum quietly admitted that the same watch had disappeared from its collection years earlier. No one had spoken about it publicly, but suddenly the watch had resurfaced in the most unexpected place. The story erupted after an anonymous online user claimed they had seen a nearly identical watch in a never-aired scene from Heritage Seekers. Others chimed in saying they remembered it too. Clips that had once floated around the internet suddenly felt suspicious. When more people stepped forward with similar memories, investigators took notice. By July, the FBI had launched a discreet operation known as Rust Rail. Their goal was simple: follow the trail of artifacts that never appeared on television. They discovered that over 40 items purchased by Mark between 2020 and 2023 were unaccounted for. Some had been filmed, yet none were tracked in official production records. One of those missing items was the same style of pocket watch found beside Clemens. While agents couldn't immediately confront Mark, they quietly followed a staff member named Craig Salinas, a backstage assistant who handled transportation for the show. During a long surveillance session, Craig was spotted driving a van from the show to an abandoned warehouse not listed anywhere in the production notes. Inside were crates filled with historical objects, some matching pieces reported missing from small museums. Search warrants led investigators to two private storage sites connected to a shell company Mark secretly controlled. In one of the warehouses, they found everything from old military manuscripts to a towering carved statue sealed inside a protective container. Reports later suggested the statue matched one taken from a museum overseas more than 10 years earlier. The financial trail was just as strange. Mark had quietly opened small companies in several foreign jurisdictions, moving millions between them without using certified appraisers or official auction houses. One account even received a large payment from a collector abroad, known for acquiring rare pieces. Behind the scenes, the operation appeared carefully structured. Items were never transported by the official TV crew. Instead, contracts were signed through virtual fax lines and payments were made in cash or digital currency. A mysterious logistics coordinator known only as Meeman handled the physical transfers. In late 2023, an undercover meeting was arranged between an agent and Mark. In the recording later presented in court, Mark said that not every item was meant for the cameras and that some pieces deserved to be appreciated only by those who truly understood them. Shortly afterward, emergency search orders were executed. Among the items seized was a coded list labeled 17, filled with symbols, dates, and values. Next to it lay a notebook in Mark's handwriting that said, "This is about preservation, not profit." By January 9, 2025, the trial began in Chicago. Crowds gathered outside, some convinced Mark had been framed. Inside, the atmosphere shifted as the evidence unfolded. Videos, documents, and financial records painted the picture of a vast secret network. One witness who once worked closely with Mark described how the pressure to deliver unique finds slowly pushed him toward riskier territory. He said Mark became determined to locate pieces no one else could access and believed that saving history justified whatever it took to get it. Mark was mostly silent throughout the trial. When he finally stood to speak, his only statement was, "I never saw myself as doing anything harmful. I wanted to save what others overlooked. If that makes me responsible, then I accept it." Those words left the courtroom in stunned quiet. When the verdict was read, the judge cited the scale of the operation and its impact on cultural preservation. Mark Wolfe was sentenced to life in prison, and all rights to the show and its brand were revoked. Within days, the network removed every episode of Heritage Seekers from its platform. The stores connected to the brand shut down, and fan pages across the internet either went silent or shifted into nostalgic tributes. As investigators continued searching through the warehouses, they found more items with unclear histories, including several that appeared to come from regions affected by conflict. Auction houses halted sales linked to Mark's name, and private collectors grew worried that their purchases might be reclaimed. Online communities split between people convinced Mark had been unfairly targeted and others who believed the evidence spoke for itself. The coded line found on the final page of his list sparked endless theories. Some believed it referenced an unknown group operating beyond public awareness, while others insisted it meant nothing at all, just another ambiguous note from a man who lived in the gray areas of history. At the facility where Mark is now held, former associates say he keeps to himself, rarely speaking, almost as if he expected everything that happened. Authorities admit the investigation isn't over, and that others involved may still be under observation. To understand how it all began, one must look back at Mark's early life. Growing up in a small Illinois town with little money, he found wonder in objects other kids ignored. Old radios, broken bicycles, rusted metal, anything with a story fascinated him. That passion carried him into adulthood and ultimately onto national television. For years, he was celebrated for respecting the past and honoring its legacy. But somewhere along the way, the desire to preserve history seemed to merge with the pressure to outdo the expectations of millions of viewers. Now, Mark Wolfe, once admired for bringing forgotten stories to life, watches history unfold from a prison cell. Some people believe he crossed a line that cannot be crossed. Others believe he was driven by a misguided attempt to protect the past from being lost forever. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere in between. And yet, as the days pass after his sentencing, the story refuses to settle. Instead of fading, it grows larger, stranger, and heavier, pulling in unexpected voices from across the country. Inside the prison, Mark's daily life is quiet, almost eerily so. Guards say he spends hours standing at the small window of his cell, looking out not at the yard, but at the distant line of trees beyond it. Sometimes he holds a small folded piece of paper in his hand, something officials say was cleared by the facility but never revealed to the public. No one knows what's written on it, but several people who visited him before access was restricted claimed it was something he read to himself every night before lying down. Rumors began circulating that Mark kept a mental record of hundreds of artifacts still hidden somewhere in the country. Items that investigators never found. Items he never wrote down or photographed. Pieces he memorized because, as one former crew member said, he trusted his mind more than any notebook. Whether this is true or not, the idea alone has sparked waves of speculation online. Some believe Mark safeguarded rare pieces in places no one would ever expect. Abandoned barns deep in the Midwest, storage units rented under false names, or even passed discreetly to collectors who never knew his identity. Others think that the coded list found in the warehouse, the mysterious document everyone keeps talking about, was only one part of something larger. A puzzle with missing pieces. A story still unfinished. An online investigator who had followed the show for years wrote that Mark always hinted at unseen paths behind every object, suggesting he had knowledge of hidden networks long before the show became famous. Fans who once watched simply for entertainment now comb through old episodes searching for clues they missed the first time. Moments where Mark's eyes linger too long on a strange box in the background. Or scenes where he smiles just a little too knowingly at an object he claims is nothing special. There's also the strange case of the final season that never aired. The network had completed nearly all filming before the investigation halted production. Crews say there were scenes where Mark acted almost solemn, as if he felt the end approaching. In one clip, according to an editor who reviewed the raw footage, Mark pauses mid-conversation with a seller, staring off into the distance before saying, History has a way of returning to those who listen. The line was marked for removal, but now people wonder why he said it at all. Meanwhile, supporters outside the prison insist that Mark wasn't trying to hide anything for profit. They argue he was trying to keep certain items out of the hands of private buyers who would bury them forever. To them, Mark was a protector caught in the crossfire of powerful people, a man who stumbled into territories where curiosity becomes dangerous. They claim he found something he wasn't supposed to find, something that made influential figures nervous. Opponents dismiss these arguments as fantasy, insisting the evidence proves Mark built an elaborate network intentionally. They say he knew exactly what he was doing, that every coded note and every quiet warehouse meeting was part of a plan to elevate himself above the world of everyday collecting. They claim he wanted to become the ultimate gatekeeper of history, someone who decided what deserved to be revealed and what should be hidden. But the truth may be far more complicated. A former friend who knew Mark before the show ever existed described him as a man who felt the past more deeply than the present. He said Mark had a habit of disappearing for days, wandering through flea markets and rural towns, not to buy anything but just to feel connected to forgotten memories. When the show became successful, that feeling intensified. Mark once confessed to him that he sometimes felt responsible for stories no one else cared about. Stories he believed would vanish unless someone preserved them. This raises a haunting question. Did Mark truly choose the path that brought him to prison? Or was he pulled into it by the weight of his own passion? Sometimes the greatest danger isn't greed or corruption, but obsession disguised as purpose. Perhaps Mark believed he was doing something noble, even when the lines blurred beyond recognition. In the days since his sentencing, people from all over the country have visited the locations where Mark once filmed. Old barns he stepped into are now treated like landmarks. Sellers who once debated prices with him say the sudden attention is surreal. Some of them quietly admit they feel a strange sense of loss, as if the world of picking itself has changed forever. Heritage Seekers wasn't just a show. It was a doorway into a world where forgotten things could be rediscovered. And now that doorway feels closed. But the biggest mystery is the one nobody can yet solve. Why didn't Mark defend himself? With mountains of evidence and a courtroom filled with people waiting for answers, he spoke only a few sentences, none of which explained his actions. Some think silence was his final act of defiance. Others think it was an admission of guilt. And a few believe he stayed quiet because there were things he couldn't say, things that would involve far more than just him. Whispers continue to grow. Investigators claim the case is still open. Court documents hint that others connected to the artifact roots may soon face questions. And deep in online forums, a new theory has gained attention. That Mark left behind a coded message hidden in one of his last recorded episodes. Fans are reviewing the footage frame by frame, convinced the truth might be sitting unnoticed in plain sight. In the end, Mike Wolfe's story has become bigger than the man himself. It has become a reflection of how passion can turn into obsession, how good intentions can lead to unintended consequences, and how even a familiar face can carry secrets no one ever imagined. What do you think about Mark's story now? Was he overwhelmed by forces around him? Or did he willingly step beyond the boundaries of what is right? Was he a misunderstood guardian of the past, or a man who let ambition take control? Share your thoughts. And if you want more dramatic deep dive stories like this one, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss what we uncover next.